According to the theory of evolution, the origin and development of the universe and all its systems can be explained solely on the basis of time, chance, and continuing processes. All living things have arisen from a single-celled organism. A second and opposing worldview is the concept of creation. According to the theory of creation, everything in the universe has come into being through the design, purpose, and deliberate acts of a supernatural creator. That means this creator created the universe, the earth, and all life on earth, including all types of plants and animals, as well as humans. On today's edition of Origins, we'll talk about the statistical impossibility of evolution.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to Origins. I'm Don Chapman, and I'm your host. It's so good having you with us today. Origins is a forum where we take the evidence of science and use it to validate the truth of creation. And I have a guest with me today who's going to make that job very easy. His name is Ralph Muncaster, and he has come to us from California. Ralph, it's great to have you with us today.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me.
Now, your training is in engineering and business administration.
Yes.
And so today we're going to talk about the statistical impossibility, not improbability, but impossibility of evolution. Is that right?
Impossible by human standards, yes.
So you're going to give us some facts and figures.
I love them. Having an engineering background, you can appreciate that, I'm sure.
Well, give us some foundation and then take it away, friend.
Be happy to. Well, first of all, what I'd like to talk about is something I think we all too often forget. I think everyone realizes that creation requires faith, because creation, people think of a divine designer. And anytime you say divine designer, of course, that leads one to Webster's definition, the originator of the universe, and that's God. So everyone thinks, of course, God requires faith. However, seldom do people think of the fact that evolution requires faith too.
Absolutely.
We're asking people to believe an incredible story about all these random molecules coming, or even pieces of molecules, parts of molecules coming together, forming from inanimate, something that's not even alive, matter, coming to life, and then springing from the simplest life form into all these complex life forms in a human being.
You mean all that is an absolutely established fact?
No, far from it. It's incredible faith that's required for evolution as well. And we'll be talking about which is more probable today, because I love, again, getting into probability. As an engineer, you're constantly dealing with statistics and probability and designing of bridges and things like that.
Okay.
Now, it's important to, again, understand that either things came about naturalistically through random chance or through some form of design. It had to have been one or the other. It can't be both. There's not a mix of that. Next, I'd like to talk about hard science versus soft science. This is pretty important. Soft sciences are what evolutionists use. Soft sciences are sciences like paleontology, study of fossils, anthropology. Soft sciences use imagination. They draw pictures. They tell stories. Now, these picture stories can be used to talk about a fish becoming a frog, They could be used to talk about a frog becoming a prince. I don't know about you, but I read about that when I was a child. You can virtually tell a story about anything you want to, and you can draw a picture to support the story.
Could be Darwin, could be Mother Goose.
It could be anything.
That's right.
Hard sciences, like physics, like engineering, do things like predict eclipses, build bridges, send men to the moon.
So when you were an engineer building a bridge, you didn't just draw a pretty picture.
No.
There's hard facts to support that.
Yes.
And that's what we're calling hard science.
Yes. In my book, Dismantling Evolution, I actually address the building of bridges, and I show how you can, using misleading artwork, you can draw something that looks very strong and in reality would be very weak. And yet, engineering-wise, I can show something that looks weak, and you can calculate that it would be very strong.
And evolution, the evidence for evolution is in the soft science category.
Correct.
All right.
The evidence I'm going to talk about today is for creation, supporting of creation and disproving evolution is in the hard science category. The category that we place our lives every day in the hard science category with the cars we drive, elevators we go up, bridges we cross, everything.
Ralph, you're painting a very different paradigm than we usually have when we discuss evolution and creation. Usually the evolutionists want us to believe that the creationists are just basing everything on religion and superstition and that they're basing everything on science. But your paradigm is saying that the evolutionist is using soft evidence and the creationist is using hard evidence.
Absolutely.
That's revolutionary.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I'll explain why.
Great.
I used to be an evolutionist. So it took hard evidence to change me. It takes a lot to give up your pride, and that's what I did.
That's right.
The fossil record, this is soft science. I want to talk about that very briefly. The contention are these beautiful pictures. Here we have the famous pictures that chimpanzee eventually turns into a human being. They're all nice pictures. And now some of these were actually hoaxes. Some of these pictures came from literal hoaxes. Now I'll talk about some of those. And of course you can draw a whole line of, if you wanted to take the first cell of life, you could draw pictures of the first cell of life becoming a human being eventually. Draw anything you want. And that's what's happening. And it's based on gradual mutational change, which is also a problem.
So there isn't a fossil record for those three middle pieces there?
There are lots of missing pieces. In
Okay.
fact, as I point out here, there are no missing links in any of the different classes. As a matter of fact, I have many quotes in my book by paleontologists that acknowledge this enormous problem. And many of them say that fossils were never intended to try to prove evolution. And of course, even Darwin admits the problems, and many since then, of course, have corroborated that. Next, I want to talk about what Darwin said. He said, why, if species have descended from other species by intensely fine graduations, do we not everywhere see innumerable transitional forms? Why not all nature in confusion? Why is not all nature in confusion instead of species be, as we see them, well defined? In other words, a true transition would have a part of an eye or a part of a feather. When we look at fossils, we see fully formed everything. It works.
Okay.
Next, Mark Ridley says the gradual change of fossil species has never been part of the evidence for evolution. Darwin showed that the record was useless for testing between evolution and special creation because it has great gaps in it. He also said no real evolutionist uses the fossil record as evidence in favor of evolution as opposed to special creation. Then we get to Michael Denton, who said not only has paleontology failed to come up with the fossil missing links, but hypothetically reconstructions of major evolutionary developments, such as that linking birds to reptiles, are beginning to look more like fantasies than serious conjectures. Moving on, George Gaylord Simpson, another evolutionary paleontologist, says the gaps, of course, in the horses in this case, is true of all 32 orders of mammals, not just horses. The earliest and most primitive known members of every order already have the basic ordinal characters, and in no case is an approximately continuous species or sequence from one order to the next known.
So there is absolutely no evidence of any transitional forms between any species anywhere in the whole chain?
Nowhere.
Okay.